Hello everyone. I uploaded this video a while back, but had to take it down because of the AI voice model I was using for the narration. I've redone the audio and decided to re-upload it because I think it has some valuable tips that could be helpful to someone. So here it is again. I hope you like it. I created this scene a while back featuring a candle-like flame that gets blown out by a gust of air coming from the left. To achieve this, I added wick geometry into a phoenix source, which uses surface force emission mode to emit temperature and smoke. Then I introduced a second source that activates at some point. This source uses a simple cylinder as its emission object, emitting only from face ID 2. Temperature and smoke emissions are turned off for this source, so it only generates an outgoing force to simulate the draft. At that point, I animated the temperature emission of the first source down to 1000 kelvins. I didn't set it to 0 because 0 kelvins equals negative 273 degrees Celsius, which is absolute zero in physics. In reality, the wick needs to stay slightly warm, and 1000 kelvins seems like a suitable value. You can adjust it to be colder or warmer, but the point is, and let me just open the volumetric settings dialog. The point is to lower the temperature emission to just below the threshold where it emits visible light. For this, 1000 Kelvin seems ideal. It is just above 700 degrees Celsius. This way, the wick will still produce some heat, but not enough to show as flames in the renderer. However, this made me wonder, would it be possible to achieve the same effect without manually animating the temperature? Could the air draft actually extinguish the flame on its own? So I decided to give it a try. If I create a sphere here and add it to the phoenix source instead of the wick, I can animate it to move near the wick and then away from it. Let me just save this as a new scene so I don't overwrite my existing caches. All right. Next, I create another source for the wick. But this time, I use the volume brush mode. Phoenix will prompt me to set the wick geometry to non-solid, which is exactly what we need, so I'll confirm that. I'll enable the fuel emission, then I'll turn off the smoke and temperature emissions for that source. With the temperature emission disabled, it will remain at the default 300 kelvins. The fuel won't rise up or fall down. To make the fuel catch fire, go to the fuel rollout and enable burning. I'll quickly adjust the simulator grid size so that the sphere's inside it from the beginning. And that's all I need to do. But if I simulate now, you might notice that there's no information about the fuel visible in the cache file content window during the simulation. The fuel is there and it will burn, but I won't be able to preview it or see what's actually happening. To make the fuel visible in the preview and potentially use it later, I need to go into the output settings for the simulation and enable the grid fuel checkbox. This way, the fuel channel will be written into the exported cache files. Now, we can see it in the cache content window and also in the voxel preview. I'll stop the simulation and temporarily disable the adaptive grid. It's currently set to adapt to the speed channel and is expanding too much from the start. For now, I'll leave it disabled to run faster test simulations. You can see that some of the fuel ignited, but it produced barely enough energy to create a visible flame. Let's make a few adjustments in the fuel rollout. I'll lower the ignition temperature to 400 and set the energy produced by the burning to 15. Next, I'll reduce the amount of smoke released by the burning fuel to 0.2 and also decrease the amount of fuel created by the source to 0.2 as well. These last two changes will make the fuel burn more intensely. In reality, oxygen is required for combustion. However, in Phoenix, there is no oxygen channel. Instead, if the combined amount of fuel and smoke is less than 1, the remainder is considered oxygen. In this case, we have a total of 0.4 for smoke and fuel combined, leaving us with 0.6 for oxygen. That should be sufficient for the flame. Let's give it a try. The fuel ignited more easily this time, producing enough energy to sustain the burning. However, it's still not enough to create a larger flame. Maybe there's too much oxygen and not enough fuel. Let's increase the amount of fuel to 0.6. That will still leave enough room for oxygen. I'll also adjust the animation keys for the sphere, sliding them to the left so it starts moving sooner. The flame is now taller, but it still doesn't have the right shape. I'll adjust the propagation speed to 30. The energy produced by the flame affects the temperature, which has now spiked to 2,400 kelvins. It also impacts how much the fuel expands. But the propagation speed controls the speed at which this expansion occurs. Setting it to a higher number will create more outward velocity, making the flame thicker. Okay, raise it even more, maybe 60. Right. That might be a bit too much. You can also see that as it heats up, it also starts rising while it's burning at the same time. Instead of reducing the propagation back down, though, let's try something else. Let's increase the fuel depletion to 15. Forcing it to deplete faster might address both of these issues. The flame looks better now, but I'm not so happy about this part down here. I'll shorten the wick by adding a slice modifier, moving the gizmo up, removing the lower part, and capping the slice. I'll also apply an STL check modifier to ensure there are no errors. It looks good, so I'll start another simulation. The burning sphere goes near the wick, it transfers some of the heat, it ignites the fuel, and at about frame 100, the air blows from the left. It looks better now, but the air didn't blow the heat away, and the wick kept burning. It seems like it retained some heat and reignited, almost as if the air couldn't blow all the heat away. This happened because I overlooked something important. In the source settings for the wick, where we disabled smoke and temperature, there's also a motion velocity option that needs to be disabled as well. When we use the volume brush mode and the emitter geometry isn't moving, the emitter sets the velocities inside that object to 0, preventing the heat from being blown away. It just stays in one place. Okay, it seems to be working now, and the flame is really starting to take shape. Let's make it expand even faster. I'll set the propagation to 150 and make the flame a bit shorter by reducing the energy back to 10. I'll enable the adaptive grid, maybe using temperature this time, and run a final simulation. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. The point of me tweaking all these settings back and forth was to demonstrate how you can use them to control and shape the flame. By understanding what they do and how they affect each other, I believe that you can create a wide variety of effects. that use the fuel channel and the fuel burning option. All right, take care, everyone.